Every result in your business and in life can be traced back to one thing. That's right, your mindset. And here's the kicker: most of the beliefs that guide your decisions, guess what? They're running quietly around in the background, almost like they're on autopilot. Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the mindsets that shape everything that you and I do. And we're also going to talk about how we can finally upgrade them for the results that we really want. Come on, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back to Transformation Station, the space where we break down the strategies and shifts that help you grow, lead, and thrive. I'm your host, Adrienne Benson, and today in this episode, we're diving into the invisible drivers of your success. That's right, we're talking about your mindset. And by the end of this episode, you'll know the exact mindset shifts that can unlock new growths levels of growth with personally and professionally. Well, listen, today I'm really excited because I have an awesome guest that I can't wait for you to meet. His name is Ryan Gottfredson. Now, Ryan is a cutting edge leadership development author, researcher, and consultant. He helps organizations vertically develop their leaders primarily through a focus on mindset. Ryan is the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of Success Mindsets, The Elevated Leader, and Becoming Better. He is also a leadership professor at the College of Business and Economics at California State University, Fullerton. Ryan, welcome to Transformation Station today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I've got a hope and an intention for our time together. And my hope and intention is that, and I appreciate the partnership with this, but that will help our listeners to have or experience an inflection point. Right?
Yes.
And what an inflection point is something that alters our trajectory. And no
Yes.
matter what our current trajectory is, I think we could always elevate it. And so I hope our conversation will help our listeners elevate their current trajectory.
I love it. I am all about elevation as well. So let's start here, Ryan. Okay. I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever noticed how two people can be in the same exact situation? One sees possibility and the other sees limitations. I experience that quite often, right? And for me, I believe that it's deals with mindset in action. So Ryan, you talk about the difference between doing better and being better, development paths. Can you unpack what those mean and why it's so important to distinguish between them?
Yeah, it was such a great question because it gets at actually and opens up a new developmental strategy that most people aren't aware of.
Okay.
So, what you're pointing out is that we have two different sides of ourselves. And I'm going
Mhm.
to suggest that we are generally more connected to one side of ourselves than the other.
Okay.
So, if you can visually see me, or if you can't visually see me, think about a horizontal axis. On our horizontal axis, this is what I call our doing side. Our doing side is our level of talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And I think where most of us are pretty aware of the talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities that we have. And when it comes to most of our development effort, think about our education systems, our athletic programs, and most of our organizational development training. And maybe you'll even add, Adrian, to military training is primarily focused on adding new knowledge, skills, and abilities to what we have. So
Yes.
this is important. There is nothing wrong with our doing side. We need to develop along our doing side. I'm just bringing up the point that we tend to be most connected to this, and this tends to be our primary focus in development. Does that make
Mm,
sense so far, the doing side?
absolutely. Yes, please. And definitely share some more about this doing side.
Okay. Well, let's contrast this to another side. So, in fact, to get us into this, let me give you some individuals. Okay,
Okay.
Adrian, and you tell me what you think these individuals have in common. All right.
Okay.
So let's go with Michael Jackson, Bill Clinton, Ellen DeGeneres, Tyra Banks, Shia LaBeouf. These are all, I hope, well-known people, or you recognize some of them.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yes.
anything they have in common?
I mean, if we're talking about mindsets, they're all public figures.
Yeah. So they're all public figures. They have all been wildly successful within their field that they've operated within, right?
Yes.
And what has led to their success, it has been their doing side, their talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. But also, if you recognize these names, you may recognize that there's also some controversy surrounding these individuals. At different times in their careers, they have misstepped, right? We could even, Tiger Woods is another one that comes to mind, right? These are individuals who have been wildly successful because of their talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities, but they have experienced significant controversy that has derailed their careers. Well, has that controversy been connected to their doing side? No, it's generally not connected to their talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So it's connected to the other side of ourselves. So the doing side is our horizontal axis.
Yes.
Now think about the vertical axis. The vertical axis is what I call our being side.
Our being side.
Our being side is the quality of our character, our psyche, our mindsets. It's our emotional regulation abilities. So the individuals, all of the controversy surrounding these individuals has more to do with their struggles with emotional regulation abilities than it is their talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And it's the being side that I find that most people aren't super connected to. And it's the side that is rarely focused on in development. But here's what I've learned as we compare and contrast the doing side to the being side is when we develop along our doing side, it is generally incrementally helpful. But it's never really more than that. But when we elevate along our being side, it could be absolutely transformational. Life. And so one of the things that I do in my work is I help leaders and people help them to understand that they have a being side. So that's my first goal. My second goal is then to help them evaluate their altitude along their being side. And then once we know where we're at, then how do we go about elevating along our being side? And that's the third focus.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot, which is not really the spot because you're my guest, right? So answer this question. Why does this matter for leaders, right? Because we're talking to leaders here. They're high-driven leaders. They've been leading for at least 10 years. Why does it matter to understand this doing and being?
Great question. So let's unpack it in a few different ways. So let me ask you this question. Give me some examples of common leadership issues that you see in the leaders that you work with.
Okay. So some leadership issues are one, feeling stagnant. Like, I'm here, but there's no real growth. I'm just kind of doing the routine like a hamster running around the reel, and then losing their vision, losing focus, feeling like they're not respected by their teams, or not knowing how to manage or supervise teams, how to lead, there you go. Not really understanding how to lead team. They understand how to get to the mission accomplished, but not how to lead a team in doing that.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that comes to my mind is you're saying that, right, is I think it's pretty common for leaders to micromanage, right? And that's a part of that not leading effectively. So all of the things that you just mentioned, are those because of deficiencies in a leader's doing side? Is it because they lack knowledge and skills? Or does it have to do with the different side of themselves that's more connected to their character, their psyche, their mindsets, and their consciousness?
That tends to usually be it.
It's more the being side, right? So now let's flip it. So what you just gave me are some common issues that we see with leaders. Let's now flip it. Give me some characteristics of really great leaders.
Calm. They outwardly, they possess a confidence that provides psychological safety for their team. They have personal initiative. They know when to be a leader and a follower, and even when they're following, they're still leading.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy, they understand how to balance with being able to be empathetic, and to get to know their people. So.
Good, right? And we could let's add some more, right? Authenticity, emotional intelligence, patience, right? When we look
Yes.
at these characteristics, are these characteristics more connected to one's doing side or one's being side?
Being.
It's all the being, right? So, but then I'll bring it back up, right? Where do most of our development efforts focus? On
On
the
the
doing,
doing.
right?
Mhm.
So if we want to get out of bad leadership and step into great leadership, it requires us focusing on the being side, but we're largely neglecting it.
Mhm.
And that's why I say if we could tap into this could be transformational.
Mm.
Because here's what I've learned is that our elevation along our being side sets the ceiling for the groups and the organizations that we lead. We
Mhm. I
can't
agree.
expect a group or an organization to operate at a higher and more sophisticated level than the level that we operate at. And so the
Correct.
only way for us to have a greater impact is to focus on our being side. And I'll just mention, because you brought up the term stagnation. You see a lot of leaders who are stagnant. They're kind of stuck. They're working hard, not getting where they want to go. And if they're stuck, it's generally not because of an issue with talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. In fact, I would assume that they have the requisite talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities, but it's the being side. And if it's okay, maybe let me share a personal example that helped me to realize this. Is that all right, Adrian?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Okay. So to give you a little bit of context, as you mentioned, Adrian, I'm a professor at Cal State Fullerton. I joined Cal State Fullerton out of my PhD program at Indiana University. And I was at Cal State Fullerton for 2 years. And to be honest, I was feeling a little stagnant myself.
Mhm.
And I had this itch to do consulting. And so what I did is I took a leave of absence from Cal State Fullerton and I took a job, consulting job with a company called Gallup. They do employee
Yep.
engagement consulting.
Mhm.
And I was thinking this would be a permanent career shift, even though I had just taken a leave of absence. And I get
Mhm.
into the Gallup, and I guess to be fair in my situation, I was kind of pigeonholed into a position that was smaller than what I felt like I signed up for. And so I
Okay.
kind of felt like I was being stuck in a corner. And over the course of my 10 months there, I grew increasingly dissatisfied with kind of how I was being utilized. And about 10 months into this, I get on the call with my manager, and I
Mhm.
ask my manager, or I'm kind of complaining to my manager, hey, I really just feel like I can do more than what I'm being able to do.
Mhm.
And she stops my conversation and my complaining, and she
Mhm.
says, Ryan, this clearly isn't working out for either of us.
Very
I'm
smart.
going to let you go.
Mm.
And I got fired. I never thought I would get fired. And I, as a husband and as a parent, in that moment, I am feeling an intense amount of shame
Correct. Mhm.
getting fired from a job. And here's what was so frustrating for me in that moment. What was so frustrating for me is that I knew I had the talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities to be successful, but
Mhm.
I wasn't. And so I then kind of was forced to wrestle with this question. Well, why did I get fired then?
Mhm.
Well, I decided to come back to Cal State Fullerton and continue my research on leadership. And what I
Mhm.
was doing in my research was I was trying to connect into the being side of leadership. See, most
Mhm.
leadership development focuses on the doing. What do you need to do to be an effective leader? And that's good. But in my mind, leadership is not about doing, it's about being. It's about
Mhm.
being somebody that others want to follow. So I started to tap back into this research stream, and I started to come across research on mindsets.
Mhm.
And I just thought, oh, this might be a great way to connect into the being of leadership. And so I opened up the floodgates. I looked up any academic article ever published on mindsets. And
Mhm.
what I found across my literature review is that across psychology, education, management, and marketing, there are 4 different sets of mindsets that are most commonly studied.
Okay.
And they all range on a continuum from being, I'm going to call it, more self-protective to more value creating. And what I found as I am looking at these 4 different sets of mindsets is that as I'm learning about them, I start to awaken to the fact that while I may have the talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities to be successful at places like Gallup, what I come to learn is that across these 4 sets of mindsets, I had the mindset that you don't want to have. I had the mindsets that were more self-protective as opposed to value creating. And that was such an eye-opener for me. I mean, because what I was now doing is I'm deepening my self-awareness of myself. I'm coming to see how my body is not wired for the success that I desire. And because I have these more self-protective mindsets, my body isn't allowing me to employ my talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities as effectively as I could with better mindsets. And so this was a huge, for me, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I want this to be a trajectory altering experience for our listeners, because that's the power that mindsets can have. When we awaken to our mindsets, they could shift our trajectory. And that's what happened to me. My life changed when I awoke into my mindsets. I shifted my mindsets, and it unlocked a world of opportunity that I never thought possible. So now I've written 3 books. I've consulted with companies all over the world, and I've created opportunities that I never thought would be possible for me. And that's the power of working on our mindsets.
Absolutely. And this is fantastic, right? Because Ryan, the reality is all of us stand in positions where growth is what will fuel us to move forward, right? So to the listeners and the viewers right now, I want to invite you to get your note-taking device, whatever it is, because Ryan's going to talk to us about these fundamental sets of mindsets, right? So Ryan, you've identified 4 fundamental sets of mindsets that shape how we lead and learn and live. Walk us through what these fundamental sets are, or foundational sets of mindsets are, and then why does it matter? Why do these 4 matter? So please walk us through.
Yeah, so let's start with the first set. This set is the one that is most commonly known. So it's the set that arranges on a continuum from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Have you heard of fixed and growth mindsets before?
Yes.
Right? So, and here's what's interesting about this is, what do you think? If I had a room, or if we had a room of 100 leaders and we asked them, do you have a fixed or a growth mindset? Do you think any of them would say that they have a fixed mindset?
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Most people feel like they have a growth mindset, but here's what's super interesting. I have a mindset assessment. If you want to go to my website at ryangotfredson.com, you could take that assessment. It's free. And I use this assessment when I work with leaders in organizations. And I've had over 50,000 people take my mindset assessment. And I've worked with probably 200 different organizations where we've looked at collective mindsets of these groups of leaders. And what I found across these groups of leaders is that on average, 60% of leaders have a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. So while most leaders think they have a growth mindset, I find that most actually do not, which I think is really fascinating. So let's talk through what are these mindsets and how do they differ from each other. So a fixed mindset is when we tend to believe that we cannot change our talents, abilities, and intelligence. We kind of are who we are, and there's nothing we can do about it. When we have a growth mindset, we do believe we could change our talents, abilities, and intelligence. And we do believe that we could change who we are at a fundamental level. And here's how this shows up differently. When we have a fixed mindset and we don't believe that we could change ourselves, when we fail or encounter a learning zone challenge, we tend to steer away from these things. Why? Because if we fail, our body tends to interpret that failure as though we are a failure. And so when we have a fixed mindset, we are wired to look good, avoid failure, and avoid learning zone challenges. It is a self-protective tendency. Now, so it does us some good in the sense that it protects us from looking bad, right? So there's a reason why we have this, but at the same time, it holds us back from stepping into learning zone challenges and ultimately learning, growing, and developing. So that's a fixed mindset. Does that make sense? Or do you have any questions there?
Absolutely. No, I think you're right on target right here. Please.
Okay.
Yes, continue.
So a growth mindset then is when we encounter some kind of a learning zone challenge and an opportunity where we might fail, we actually are more inclined to step towards it. Because when we fail, our body doesn't interpret that as though we are a failure.
Yes.
When we fail, that suggests to us, oh, I'm not yet where I need to be. Now, what do I need to do to get where I need to be?
Yes.
And so failure is not self-defeating for people with the growth mindset. And so when we have this growth mindset, we're much more willing to step into learning zone challenges, take on new challenges that we're not familiar with for the pursuit of learning, growth, and development, fully knowing that in our pursuit for learning, growth, and development, we are going to fail and we are going to fall short at times. But it's those failures and falling short that they do not define us. Right. And that's a growth mindset. And so what I see in leaders and organizations is that most leaders feel so much pressure to look good that they have a tendency to hold on to what's worked in the past, and they are unwilling to let go of that past and embrace these learning zone challenges. So what I find in most organizations is most leaders are tendency to hold on to the past, which means they're kind of growing stale by the byproduct of holding on to what's worked in the past. They're slow to adopt to change. And ultimately, that holds their entire organization back. But so hopefully that's a good description of fixed and growth mindsets. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I can see, as you're talking, I see it. Like I see it in reality in the workspace. I see it in previous organizations that I've worked in. And I even see it with myself, that focus really makes a difference. And as you were talking, I was thinking about also like the body keeps the score, right? Our minds and our bodies are very much connected. When your mind has that mentality, like you were saying, that fixed mindset, right? How do I look? You are prioritizing the temporary as opposed to the legacy, the growth, the succession. And it makes a difference in how you engage, how you interact, the control measures, right? What you hold on to. You walk around with your hands pretty much closed as opposed to being open and cooperative. So like this makes perfect sense.
Well, you opened a door that I want to step into just briefly, if that's okay. Okay. You brought up the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which I love. It is a great book. And here's one, and it's also it's fueled an area of study that has now become really near and dear to my heart, which is about the role that trauma plays in leadership effectiveness. And what I've learned through this process, and even for myself, is that there's different reasons why we might have more self-protective mindsets. But one of the primary reasons is past trauma, right? The more trauma we have experienced in our past, our body's nervous system natural reaction is to help prevent future trauma, which means that we adapt more of this self-protective wiring. And so when going back to my story, when I came to learn, I had all four of these self-protective mindsets. I didn't realize it at the time, honestly, but I later came to realize I have trauma in my past. That while my parents were always there for me physically, they were rarely there for me emotionally. I experienced emotional neglect as a child, which is what fueled my body's self-protective wiring. So hopefully that just, anyways, that was the door I want to step into. I think we'll probably come back to that.
Come back to it, yes.
But I want to help people recognize that these mindsets are intimately connected to our being and the wiring within our body, right? And you brought it up at the outset. Generally, our mindsets reside below the level of our consciousness, and they dictate how we think, learn, and behave. And so what we're doing here by putting labels to these mindsets is we're bringing mindsets to the level of our consciousness. And when we do that, we could do something about it. Anything
I love it.
You want to add to that?
No, this is really good. So I'm really excited to learn about the remainder of the mindsets, right? So we talked about the fix, we talked about the growth, and again, to our viewers and our listeners, this is a great time. Here in Transformation Station, we pause and we take some opportunities to reflect, right? To gather ourselves and really hone in on how is this talking to me, and how can I leverage this good resource and gems that I'm receiving? So I invite you right now to go ahead and just pause for a moment. As you heard Ryan talk about fixed mindset and growth mindset, where do you see yourself operating in, right? Ryan spoke to us and said most of us believe that we have a growth mindset, but the truth is many of us are operating out of a fixed mindset. And then ask yourself, like, which mindset do you want to, and what are the steps? And we'll talk about that later. But what are some of the steps you can take to adjust, right? So Ryan, fixed mindset, growth mindset, please share with us some more.
Yeah, so we've now kind of warmed up to this idea of this continuum, self-protected to value creating. So as we stepped in the next 3 steps, we'll go through it a little bit more quickly. So the next set is what is called a closed mindset to an open mindset.
Okay.
When we have a closed mindset, we believe that what we know is best. And when we believe that what we know is best, our body becomes wired to focus on being right.
Being right.
And so that's a closed mindset. When we have an open mindset, we have this inherent belief that while we may know a lot, we don't know it all. We don't have the corner on truth. And when our body can acknowledge that, we are no longer focused on being right. We're focused on finding truth and thinking optimally. So generally, those of the closed mindset have some fears and insecurities about admitting when they're wrong. Whereas people with an open mindset are much more willing to admit that they're wrong because they see admitting that they're wrong as a step towards truth and growth. And so what I find in my research is the people that struggle the most with this continuum generally are people who identify as experts, right? They know a lot, right? And when their identity is connected to their expertise, it's really difficult for somebody to admit that they're wrong. So I would say by and large, most people are kind of moderate on this continuum. Experts lean really closed. But of course, ideally, we want to have that open mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're listening and watching right now and you're hearing Ryan talk about closed versus open, don't say ouch, just say because we understand the truth about ourselves, right? So talk to us some more. Fixed, growth, closed, open. Why does this matter? Why does this matter?
Right. So again, this is going on beneath the surface.
Yes.
Right. And it's either we're wired more for self-protection. So in like a lot of leaders, when an idea comes forward, a lot of leaders, their anxiety rises because now they're feeling I'm put on the spot, or maybe I feel like I'm getting challenged. And when our body feels that way, that's going to move us towards closed. We're going to shut down those ideas and suggestions of others. But when we have a much more sophisticated being side or internal operating system, when those ideas come forward, even if they make us feel uncomfortable in the moment, we're willing to take a breath, create space for those ideas, and step into them. That doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but we create the space to step into them.
I like that. 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 Right there. So I just want to pause for one moment because I think that is powerful, right? It's not necessarily like a magic wand, like everything is going to be better. You're all of a sudden going to be super, super courageous. But what it does is and we're going to talk about fear in a moment. It pushes the fear. It's almost like pushing out the negative endorphins so you can have the positive ones, right? It pushes out that fear and ushers in courage. Sometimes as leaders, we just need to find the courage to be, in terms of to be present, not be as in do, right? But to just be present, to just be present in the moment, to just be in the room, right? And many times because we're fixed or we're closed, we won't even get into the room. Right?
So I love that, right? Let's just touch on that topic of courage. Here's a definition of courage as it relates to what we've talked about along our being side and this continuum from self-protection to value creation. Courage is one's capacity to step beyond their self-protective tendencies in a manner that allows them to better create value for the world around them. Right? There's a reason why we celebrate superheroes, because they seem to be people
Yes.
who are willing to put off their self-protective tendencies for the greater good of the group. And
Yes.
that's that moment, right? Because we're all going to find ourselves in this place of tension between, do I move away from a learning zone challenge, or do I move towards a learning zone challenges? And there's going to be the heat of a moment, right? In a basketball game, right? Well, I coach my son's basketball team. He's 10 years old. He wants to learn and develop as a basketball player. In the heat of a game, is he willing to try a new move, a new type of shot, as a way to learn and grow and develop? Or, like, for example, he could try to shoot a layup with his offhand. Or does his body get scared and think, I don't want to let my team down, or I don't want to let my parents down, right? So in that heat of the moment, he's got this opportunity to shoot a layup with his left hand in a game. Does his body move him towards what feels best, which is maybe reverting back to his right hand? Or does his body move towards, I want to develop, and so I could be a greater value creator, not now, but in the future, right? And so that, to me, that's maybe a definition of courage within this context.
I love that. I love that. So to the leaders that are listening right now, they're saying, okay, Ryan, I'm with you. I hear it. I understand the value. I would love to live this life as a leader, right? That lives out being able to have the mindsets, right? That are open, that are more towards growth. What is one mindset shift that entrepreneurs, that leaders need in order to see growth as an opportunity rather than a challenge?
Yeah, wonderful question. And let me just ask you, I feel like we're leaving our listeners hanging because there's just two more sets of mindsets. Can I quickly go
Yes,
through those and come
absolutely.
back to
Let's
that
go back.
question?
Yes,
Okay,
please, please.
awesome. So we've talked about fixed and growth, closed and open. Now let me give you the third set. It's the
Yes.
difference between a prevention mindset and a promotion mindset. So when we have a prevention mindset, we are primarily focused on avoiding problems and not taking risks. And when we have a promotion mindset, we're focused on accomplishing a purpose or a goal. And what I find is that most people have a prevention mindset. They kind of live life in a manner in which they kind of wake up in the morning and they think, how do I get through today as easy as possible? When that's kind of our mentality, we will do the things that will just lead to the least amount of problems or difficulty in our life.
Ooh.
But we never really get anywhere, right? If we envision this mountain in front of us, the only way that I'm going to get to the top of that mountain is if I make it my intention. And I say to myself, the risk that it's going to take to climb this mountain is worth it. Right? I've got a purpose. I've got a mountain to climb. I'm going to take it. I'm going to go through the effort. I will encounter problems along the way. And that is okay. Because the only way that we could arrive at greatness is by wading through problems.
Yes. Yes.
And so people with the promotion mindset, of course, they don't want problems, but they recognize problems are an inevitable part of the journey of reaching a higher level. And so most people have a prevention mindset and they just kind of go about life. Let me avoid problems. It's really the people that have a promotion mindset. They have two ingredients. They have a clear destination about where they're headed, and they have a clear why for getting there.
Listen, this is like a masterclass right now. And I was talking to my staff earlier this week, and I was sharing, we were working through a challenge, right? And I was sharing with them, I said, it's the challenges that really test our character and show really where our mindset is. Because if all we're focused on during the challenge is how to resolve it, we're bound to repeat the same thing and find ourselves right back here again. But if we look at the challenge for what it is, name it, be authentic with it, and then ask ourselves, what have we learned from this situation? Then that will then cause us to see the opportunity to put new processes in place or make some adjustments so that we don't come back here again
Mhm.
intentionally. And I love
Yes.
that prevention versus promotion. That's one of my takeaways from today. Definitely, as I talk to my staff, we want a promotion mindset and not necessarily in elevation. I think the increase, the elevation, the new, it will naturally come if we allow ourselves to have a mindset in this way.
Yes. Good. So that's the third set. And then the last set is the difference between an inward mindset and an outward mindset. When we have an inward mindset, we have a tendency to see others as objects,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what's going on here is when we are seeing ourselves as more important than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we see ourselves as more important than others, we have a tendency to see others as objects, right?
Mm.
So, for example, have you ever been driving along the freeway and the car speeds past you in the lane next to you, and they put their blinker on and to merge into your lane right in front of you, and you don't let them in,
Yes.
right? I've been there. I've done that, right? I always feel the need to justify myself. And the way that I justify myself is I don't say I didn't let that person in. What I
Mm-hmm.
say is I didn't let that car in. Because in
Mm.
that moment, what I'm saying to myself is I'm more important than they are. This
Mm.
space in my lane is more important to me than it is to them.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I see myself as more important than another, that leads me to objectify those other individuals. They are either a hurdle that is getting in my way or an instrument to help me get where I want to go. But they are not a person.
Mm-hmm.
But when
Mm-hmm.
we have an outward mindset, we see others as being just as important as ourselves.
Mm.
And when we see others as being just as important as ourselves, it allows us to see them as people. Right? In
Yes.
that car situation, I'm not saying that they're not a jerk. They might be a jerk, right? But what I know about that situation is I have no clue about what is going on in their world. Right? They could be in an emergency. I don't know, and I will never know. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is the onus is on me to determine whether or not I choose to see them as an object or see them as a person. And when
Mm.
on this inward to outward mindset continuum, where we stand gauges how easily we see somebody as an object versus how readily we see others as people. And
Mm.
I think that this is right when you look at any atrocity that has ever occurred,
Yes.
in history. I think in my mind the Holocaust is just like, oh my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
at the root of any atrocity, and you can think even about racism, sexism, whatever it might be. At the root of it is an inward mindset, seeing
Mm.
others as objects.
As objects. Mm-hmm. Yes. I
So those are the four sets of mindsets.
Wow. Take us through one more time, right? So first we had the fixed mindset and the growth, right? Versus the growth mindset. Then
Yep.
we had the closed mindset versus the open mindset. Then we had prevention versus promotion. And we wrap up the cycle with inward versus outward.
Yep. And here's, I mentioned before, I've had 50,000 people take my mindset assessment, and
Mhm.
there's only 2.5% of people that are in the top quartile for all four sets of mindsets.
Wow.
So if you take my mindset assessment and you don't like your results, welcome to the club. That's everybody, essentially, myself included, right? I'm still working on my mindsets. And so most of us just have some mindset work to do. We all have some self-protective tendencies.
Mhm.
That is natural, that is normal. There's nothing to beat ourselves up over that. But
Mhm.
now, once we come to know and understand our self-protective wiring, we
Mhm.
now have the ability to do something about it. And
Absolutely.
that's why I think that this could be trajectory altering.
I love it. So listen, we're going to extend the time here just a little bit because there's some things that I have to ask you, right? I really want to know this one because I know that fear many times is something that holds not just people, but it holds leaders back. I mean, leaders many times we project this confidence, right? But on the inside, many times fear is at work. So from what you've seen, what role does fear play in our development, and how can we develop the capacity to step into fear instead of away from it?
Yeah, great question. So if we look at those 4 self-protective mindsets, fix, close, prevention, and inward, there's specific fears that are connected to those. So when we have a fixed mindset, we have the fear of looking bad and failing. When we have a closed mindset, we have the fear of being wrong or not being in control. When we have a prevention mindset, we have the fear of having problems or things going bad. And then when we have an inward mindset, we have the fear of us getting passed up by others. And so these fears, again, will come about because of our life's experience or our current culture, right? Our environmental culture might feed some of these fears, right? We may have learned in our culture, you can't fail or you can't make mistakes. Well, now I'm going to be more fearful and self-protective. I'll develop more of a fixed mindset. So at the root of any of our hangups, from where we are now to where we want to go, to your point, is fears. And fears are mindsets. Fears and mindsets are intertwined together. Where you find self-protective mindsets, you'll find self-protective fears. And so the idea is, right, if we want to shift our mindsets, ultimately, we're going to have to overcome our fears. And this gets back to the question that you asked earlier. So in my mind, there's kind of 2 strategies that we need to take simultaneously to overcome our fears and upgrade our mindsets. Okay, so let me tell you about the first strategy. The first strategy is more directly related to that fear. Wherever we find these fears, and one of the ways that we could find them is we could develop if-then statements. For example, if we might have, and comes back through some of the coaching that I've done with leaders, if I fail, then I will be reprimanded. Or if I make a mistake, my team or my leaders will lose confidence in me, right? When we identify these if-then statements, these are assumptions, right? And the thing that we need to explore about these assumptions is, are they 100% true? Is it 100% true that if I fail, that I will be seen as a failure? And it's not 100%. It might be 30%, it might be 50%, it might be 90%, but it's not 100%. And so when we understand our programming is what these if-then statements are, when we understand our programming, it gives us the opportunity to test out and push against this programming. Right? If we have a fear of failure, what I'm actually going to say to somebody I'm coaching is, you actually need to go out there and fail. Now, I don't want them to go out there and fail in a big, grand way. I want them to start small, and I want them to fail in a little way as an experiment to see what happens. Do I get reprimanded by others? Do other people lose confidence in me? Or when I fail, do they acknowledge the fact that I'm pushing my limits? Let's just figure that out, right? So that's the first step, is we got to push against these fears in small ways and think about these as experiments. So that's one approach that we need to take. The second approach is more directly connected to our mindsets, because ultimately it's our mindsets that drive these fears. And so if I awaken to the fact that I have a fixed mindset, a closed mindset, a prevention, or an inward mindset, I want to isolate that mindset. And then what we need to recognize is that our mindsets are actually neural connections in our brain. And they are responsible for us processing our world. And our neural connections are a lot like our muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they become. So if I find, and this is the case for me, if I find, for example, I found for myself, I had a prevention mindset. And so that means, I want to develop a growth mindset, a promotion mindset. So if I want to develop a promotion mindset, that means I have to hit the gym for my promotion mindset neural connections. And so one of the things that I did, this is just an example of a mindset exercise, is we need to develop habits that regularly activate and strengthen our value creating mindset neural connections. So when I first started doing my mindset work, I had a business owner that gave me this book here. It's called The 5-Minute Journal.
Okay. Yep. I've seen it.
This book, and he says, this book will change your life. And outwardly, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I love books. Thank you so much. Inwardly, I'm like, who the hell do you think I am? There is no way that I'm going to journal. right?
Mhm.
And so I get home and literally I go to throw this book in the trash. And I,
Mm.
I had almost like this spiritual epiphany. I saw this leader's face in my mind's eye, and I
Mm.
heard the words, "This book will change your life." And
Mhm.
I'm like mid throw, and I reel the book back in, and I look at it, and I open it up. Okay, it's asking me to write down every morning 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today great, and some self affirmations. And I kind of
Mm.
say, well, I could give it a shot. Let me give it, I'm going to give this 2 weeks. And if I don't feel like this helps me out, it's going in the trash.
Mhm.
Well, speed the story along. I've now been doing this every day for the last 7 years, right?
Mhm.
Because that question, the second question, what would make today great, helped me every day to exercise my promotion mindset neuroconnections. I used to wake up, how do I get through today as easy as possible? As I
Mm.
started to do this every day, I
Mhm.
started to change my approach to life. And I started to think, not how do I get through today as easy as possible? How do I
Mhm.
make the most of today? And how do I make the most of this week? How do I make the most of this year? And I started to expand my horizon. And
Mhm.
so this is just an example of a tool or a type of mindset exercise. So this is a different type of development than
Yes.
doing side development,
Yes.
right? We're not learning new knowledge and new skills. We are literally rewiring our body. We're upgrading our internal operating system. And it
Mhm.
takes these types of tactics. So I'm happy to talk about this more, but I'll just say if you want to dive into this further, go to my website, take my mindset assessment, and it'll open up the door for access to a variety of different tools like the 5 Minute Journal and other resources.
Absolutely. So you actually helped us to turn the corner, right? Because you helped us to end this podcast with a best practice. You have heard Ryan. This is an amazing conversation that really and truly should be causing you and causing us to stop to reflect. Not just to reflect like, oh, okay, I heard something good, but to really and truly be authentic in our reflection and then start moving ourselves forward. It's time to upgrade your mindset. And Ryan gave a practical application, right? He said he has a 5 minute journal, right? And he asks himself a question each day that moves his mindset into the promotion mindset. I challenge you. That's right. I challenge you as I challenge myself. This is the way, the best practices that we want to use to be able to move forward. So, Ryan, I'm going to go back to you talked about your assessment and you mentioned that you have a website. Talk to us just a little bit more about the resources that people can engage with you.
Yeah, so go to ryangottfredson.com. There you'll find access to actually a few different assessments. We've talked about the mindset assessment. There's another couple other assessments, a vertical development assessment and a stagnation assessment that will help you deepen your self-awareness. Because here's what I've learned. The deeper we go in terms of our self-awareness, the higher our potential for our being side altitude. So those are
Mm.
some tools and resources. And of course, if you want to get access to any of my books, I've also got a weekly newsletter, things like that. So all of that you'll find on my website.
All right, Transformation Station community, you know that we love to support our guests. So I want to invite you. The website is here on the screen. You'll also see the link in the description. Please go and tap into the resources that Ryan is telling you about so we can continue to elevate, upgrade, and grow as a community, as well as reach out to Ryan. Let him know that you watched or you listened to this particular episode. Talk to him some more about the mindsets. Ask him questions. He is a wonderful resource. Ryan, it has been amazing to have you as a guest today. Thank you so much for sowing deeply into our community and helping us to elevate our mindsets.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for creating this space for us to all learn, grow, and develop. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. All right. Well, there you have it. Listen, as we talked about, mindsets are like operating systems. They run the show whether you're aware of them or not. And the good news is we can always upgrade them. That's right. So now I'd love to hear from you. What's one mindset shift you know you need to make after today's episode? Go ahead and share it with me on whatever social media platform you are watching or listening to this on. Don't forget to also share it with Ryan because guess what? Your insight might inspire someone else to take action too. And if this episode gave you an aha moment, Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with a friend who could use a mindset upgrade right now also. So until next time, keep on growing, keep on shifting, and keep stepping into the version of you that's already capable of more than you think.